Okay, so you're thinking about trying a new operating system. Something, well, a little different. And you know what they say, when it comes to tech, sometimes different is good. Which leads us to today's deep dive. FydeOS. Imagine if Chrome OS could break free from those Chromebooks, run on anything. That's the idea behind FydeOS. And their website, well, let's just say they make some pretty bold claims, like crazy fast boot times, super tight security, can run all your apps. We're going to find out if it's all true or just a bunch of hype. We'll be looking into how it stacks up against, the big guys, Windows, Chrome OS.
Should be interesting to see how they compare.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll know if FydeOS is even worth a second glance. So, FydeOS calls itself simple, swift, and secure. An 8-second boot time, updates that don't, hijack your whole system, and one place for all your apps.
That's impressive.
Right. But part of me's thinking, is this too good to be true?
Well, you got to hand it to them, but they're really honing in on what drives people crazy about operating systems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Slow startups, those update interruptions, constantly struggling to make apps work. I can see why they'd focus on that.
Yeah, it's smart marketing for sure. I've fallen for hype before, but I'm trying to keep an open mind. One of their biggest claims is about speed. They're saying FydeOS is faster, way faster than Windows, especially on older machines. Is there any truth to that, you think?
It actually might be true. FydeOS, kind of like Chrome OS, is built to be really lightweight. It's optimized for, web apps, things like that. So basically, it's not using up a ton of system resources, so it boots faster, runs smoother, especially on older hardware that might struggle with a system like Windows.
Interesting.
And it's part of a bigger trend too, right? Cloud computing. As we do more and more online, having an operating system that's laser focused on the web just makes sense.
Makes sense. So maybe they're onto something with the speed thing. But
Right.
what about security? They talk a big game about being super secure. Their website makes it sound like Fort Knox for your data,
Yeah.
built-in virus protection, encryption, a read-only file system. What does all that even mean for, everyday use?
Well, let's break it down. That read-only file system, that's a big one. Basically, the core parts of FydeOS are locked down, tight.
Yeah.
Can't really be changed or infected, even with malware. Like having this pristine master copy of the operating system that's always safe.
Oh, okay.
So it's a good security feature, but there's a trade-off. If you're someone who likes to, tinker, mess with system files, install custom software, FydeOS might feel limiting. You're giving up some flexibility for that security.
A double-edged sword, huh? So it's like peace of mind knowing your system's secure, but maybe not for the control freaks out there.
Speaking of installing things, they say you can run, get this, web apps, Android apps, AMD Linux apps all on FydeOS. Is that even possible? How well does it actually work?
So they're using this combination of containerization and emulation. It's like, imagine these separate secure compartments for apps from different platforms so they don't mess with each other. Containerization, like ships in a harbor.
Okay, I get it.
And then emulation, that's more about mimicking another system's whole software environment, which can be, a bit more resource heavy.
Right. So, yeah, it's impressive they can theoretically run all these different apps, but in reality, the experience might vary.
Makes sense.
Don't be surprised if you run into some bugs, compatibility issues, performance dips, especially with those really demanding apps.
Yeah, I guess that's to be expected with any operating system trying to do this much, right?
Right.
Okay, so how does FydeOS actually stack up against the big players? Windows, Chrome OS, how do they compare?
Well, FydeOS isn't afraid of a little competition. They've got these comparison tables on their website, and they're really going after Windows and Chrome OS.
Oh, they're throwing shade.
A little bit. For users who care about speed, security, being simple to use, they're really pushing that FydeOS is the way to go. And of course, it's completely free to use, unlike some versions of Windows.
Yeah, that's a big selling point for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And they're playing up the whole automatic updates thing, contrasting it with those clunky Windows updates that everyone hates.
Right, right.
And then, of course, they hammer home the security features, especially compared to what they're implying are, Windows vulnerabilities.
Sounds like they're saying Windows slow, expensive, risky. Come on over to FydeOS. But are they being totally fair? I mean, are they telling the whole story?
Every company's going to highlight their good side when they're comparing themselves, right?
Sure.
And while FydeOS is designed to be more secure from the ground up, Windows has gotten a lot better with security, in recent years.
Good point.
And yeah, those FydeOS updates sound great, all seamless, but you often lose some control. With Windows, the updates might be annoying, but at least you've got more options like scheduling them or putting them off. It's a trade-off.
So it's like, read between the lines, figure out what matters most to you. Don't just take those comparisons as the whole truth. What about Chrome OS? FydeOS and Chrome OS kind of related, right?
Yeah, they both come from that open source Chromium project,
Yeah.
but FydeOS is like the cooler cousin,
Yep.
more versatile, more customizable.
Okay.
They make a big deal about being compatible with Android and Linux apps, which can be a pain on Chrome OS, depending on your device.
Yeah, that flexibility is a big plus.
And then there's the whole de-Googling thing. They push that as a major win for privacy.
De-Googling.
Right.
What is that exactly? Are they ditching Google completely?
Not entirely, but they're giving you the option to remove a lot of Google's services and use other stuff instead,
Interesting.
which is a big deal if you're worried about Google, all their data collection. You get more control over your data.
Right.
But you got to remember how deeply Google stuff is baked into Chrome OS. If you opt out, you might lose some features or some apps might not work right.
Ah, so there are trade-offs there too.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from those core FydeOS features to like how it stacks up against the big names. If you're thinking, hey, this FydeOS thing is kind of interesting, what are the big takeaways, the things to really keep in mind?
Well, I think the biggest thing is FydeOS could be a really cool option. If you're all about speed, security, having a computing experience is just, well, smoother. And they're tapping into some real frustrations people have.
For sure, like we were saying earlier.
Exactly. But like with anything tech, you got to weigh the pros and cons.
It's never one size fits all.
Right. Like if you're someone who needs total control over your system, you love to tweak every little thing, or you rely on some really specific software that only runs on Windows, FydeOS might not be your jam.
Makes sense.
But if you're into that idea of a fast, secure, de-Googled OS,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to give an old device a second life, FydeOS is worth checking out.
It's like choosing a path, right? The familiar one, or like you said, that one less traveled.
I like that. And speaking of less traveled paths, here's something to chew on. What if FydeO actually delivers even half of what they're promising? It could really shake things up.
It would be huge.
But the real test is, how it works for you in your everyday life.
And that's what it comes down to. All this is just talk until you actually try it. So for our listeners who are ready to go beyond the hype, check out the show notes for some FydeOS links. And let us know what you find. Does it live up to the hype for you? Would you ever ditch Windows or Chrome OS for FydeOS? Until next time, keep exploring, keep those tech questions coming, and keep diving deep.